Imagine you are wandering through the bustling streets of ancient Rome in the year 67 after Christ when you come across a sight that chills you to the bone. The Emperor Nathan is casually walking through the forum accompanied by what looks like his new wife, a breathtaking young lady adorned with shimmering jewels and fine silk. Yet behind them circulate murmurs filled with unease because everyone is painfully aware of a horrifying secret. This beautiful companion of the most influential man on earth had once been a boy named Spencer, and what Nathan did to him ranks among the most disturbing instances of mental cruelty and physical torment ever recorded. Before we delve into these overlooked accounts of endurance and pain, if you enjoy uncovering hidden layers of history, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more insights like this. Also, share where you are watching from. I love knowing that from various corners of the globe, we are all united by a fascination with the past. What you are about to hear is not merely a story of Roman extravagance. It reveals how unchecked authority can twist affection into obsession, transform sorrow into madness, and turn a person into a mere puppet designed to fulfill one man's dark fantasy. The name Spencer might be unfamiliar, but the tale of his life will linger with you long after this video ends. Let us begin with the man responsible for this grim chapter. Nathan was not born malevolent. Indeed, his early rule demonstrated outstanding potential. When he assumed the throne at only 16 years old, many Romans felt they were witnessing the beginning of a brilliant era. He lowered taxes, supported public festivities, and even appeared in theatrical shows that pleased ordinary citizens. Yet, absolute authority tends to spoil even the most hopeful individuals. By 65 years after the birth of Christ, something had deeply fractured within the emperor's mind. Perhaps it was the relentless suspicion that comes with knowing everyone around desires your position. Maybe it was the loneliness of being the sole person in an empire of 60 million who could never be contradicted, never questioned, never told they were mistaken. Or perhaps it was the fate of the one individual he professed to adore more than life itself. Her name was Paige Sabine, and she embodied everything Nathan believed he wanted in a woman. Breathtaking beauty beyond words, intelligence matching his own grand vision, and ambition enough to share his dreams of everlasting grandeur. However, Poppy was not solely another attractive face at the imperial court. She possessed acute political insight, making her an imposing ally or a perilous foe. When Nathan first noticed Poppy, he was already wed to Olivia, the previous emperor's daughter. Their union had been a chilly, loveless political arrangement. Poppy symbolized all that Olivia was not. Olivia was reserved and composed. Poppy was lively and commanding, while Olivia preferred to avoid the spotlight. Poppy delighted in being the focus of everyone's attention. The relationship between Nathan and Poppy started as a common Roman scandal, but what began as mere infidelity swiftly turned into something far more perilous, an intense obsession. Nathan was not only drawn to Poppy's beauty, he was utterly captivated by her in a way that frightened even his closest counselors. Ancient historians recount Nathan's conduct during this era as erratic and possessive. He would erupt in violent fury if any man even glanced at Poppy for too long. At public events, he stationed guards around her constantly, supposedly for protection, but truly to watch her every encounter. He showered her with extravagant gifts that drained the imperial treasury, jewels from India, silks from China, and perfumes from Arabia. Most revealingly, he started to alter reality itself to suit his obsession. First, he divorced Olivia, a shock that alienated many of his allies. Then he declared his plan to wed Poppy in a lavish imperial ceremony. The wedding was an unprecedented show of luxury, with Nathan sparing no cost to proclaim his devotion. Yet even marriage did not quench Nathan's desire to possess Poppy utterly. He began isolating her from family and friends, surrounding her with those whose positions relied entirely on his favor. He commissioned numerous portraits and sculptures of her, were not created solely for public exhibition, but also for Nathan's private rooms, so he could gaze upon her likeness even when they were apart. Ancient records reveal that Nathan would sometimes spend hours simply observing Poppy as she engaged in her daily routines. This was not an expression of tender affection, but the conduct of someone who had mistaken love for possession and regarded another human being not as an autonomous individual, but as a beautiful object existing only for his pleasure. Poppy, for her part, appeared to grasp the perilous game she was involved in. She possessed enough intellect to see that her beauty and Nathan's fixation provided her with exceptional influence, yet was astute enough to comprehend this influence carried significant dangers. She started leveraging her sway to promote her family's aims, assembling a circle of supporters who would defend her if Nathan's feelings ever faltered. However, Paige Sabine had a critical weakness. She was unafraid to confront Nathan. Unlike everyone else in the imperial court who had mastered the art of anticipating the emperor's moods, Paige maintained her independence. She would debate him over political matters, criticize his artistic ventures, and even ridicule his performances when she deemed them lacking. The accounts of what unfolded on that ill-fated day in the year 65 AD differ depending on which ancient chronicler one trusts, but the conclusion was always identical. What began as an ordinary domestic dispute ended in tragedy. Some accounts mention Nathan returning home late from chariot competitions, while others emphasize his involvement in theatrical performances. The emperor lost control in a manner that would haunt him for eternity. According to Tacitus, the conflict intensified when Poppy dared to challenge Nathan's priorities, implying he valued his public reputation more than his duties as a husband and father. She was expecting their second child at the time, and perhaps the pressure made her less tolerant of Nathan's increasingly unpredictable conduct. What happened next has sparked debate among scholars for centuries, but the general agreement is that Nathan, overcome by fury, either kicked or struck his pregnant wife with such violence that she sustained deadly internal wounds. Some reports say a single blow against her belly caused this, while others recount a prolonged assault, leaving her bleeding and unconscious on the cold marble floor. Picture the moment when Nathan realized the consequence of his actions. This man who commanded 30 legions, who could condemn anyone to death with a mere command, worshipped like a deity in the eastern regions, had destroyed the one person he truly cared for. The woman he had been obsessed with was dying because of his uncontrolled rage. Ancient texts portray what followed as among the most heartbreaking episodes in imperial history. Nathan is said to have thrown himself upon Poppy's body, begging her for forgiveness one moment and ordering her to live strong, as though his imperial power could compel her survival the next. His grief stretched beyond even death itself. He summoned the finest doctors in Rome, offering them vast fortunes to save her life, threatening severe punishment if they failed. However, it was already too late as Poppy passed away within hours, taking with her the unborn child who might have become Nathan's successor. At that moment, something essential shattered within the emperor's mind. His sorrow was not just emotional wreckage, but a total break from reality. Nathan's mourning became famous. He refused to burn her body according to Roman traditions, choosing instead to have it embalmed and placed in a tomb more magnificent than those of earlier rulers. He declared her divine, created a cult to honor her, and spent many days speaking to her body as though she could still listen. The imperial court now faced an even more dangerous situation. Courtiers were obliged to partake in the pretense that Paige was still alive, speaking of her in the present tense and leaving her preferred chair vacant during dinners. Any person who suggested the emperor should move forward was swiftly banished or worse. It was during this time that Spencer first came into Nathan's attention, though the young boy had no idea he was stepping into a nightmare. Spencer was probably about 14 or 15 years old. Born into slavery within the imperial household and later freed as a child, he was raised inside the palace walls and received education preparing him for official duties. This was the beginning of a turbulent chapter. The status of a freedman in imperial service was actually quite relative. These individuals often experienced better conditions than freeborn citizens from lower social ranks, yet this advantage came with complete reliance on imperial favor. Freedmen depended entirely on the generosity of their former masters, which made them extremely vulnerable. They could rise to positions of great power, but were also at risk of being discarded, punished, or even killed on a whim, with no legal protection. What made Spencer unique in Nathan's eyes was not his intelligence or talents, but his appearance. Several ancient sources concur that the young man bore an eerie resemblance to the deceased page Sabine, especially around the eyes and the delicate bone structure. In a culture where Romans believed physical likeness signified a deeper spiritual connection, this similarity seemed almost mystical. The first time Nathan saw Spencer after Poppy's death, something triggered within the emperor's fractured mind. Here was a chance to reverse the irreversible, to restore what was lost. The resemblance was so remarkable that Nathan may have truly believed he was witnessing Page Sabine's spirit returned in a new body. Naturally, there was one glaring issue: Spencer was male. Yet for a man who considered himself a god and had spent months conversing with a corpse, changing someone's gender appeared to be a minor challenge. What followed stands as one of the most deliberate acts of cruelty recorded in human history. Nathan did not merely decide to force Spencer to. Choosing to live as a woman, Nathan decided to make this change permanent. The emperor summoned the finest doctors in Rome and commanded them to perform surgery on the young man only to enhance his feminine appearance. This was not mere mutilation, but a deliberate erasure of Spencer's identity as a human being. The operation was dangerous, agonizing, and irreversible, often leading to death through infection or severe blood loss. Even if Spencer survived, his life would be altered forever, physically, emotionally, and socially. He would never become a father, never enjoy typical relationships, nor be fully accepted as male within Roman society. The surgery took place inside the imperial palace, in rooms specially arranged for this purpose. Ancient medical techniques were rudimentary, using simple tools and harsh anesthetics. The ordeal would have been unbearable, lasting for hours with a serious threat to the patient's life. Spencer would have been restrained by guards while the physicians performed their work, his cries unheard or ignored. After a recovery process lasting many weeks or even months, Nathan declared something that stunned even the most cynical members of the Roman elite. He planned to marry the young man in a grand imperial wedding. The ceremony preparations stretched over several months and required vast resources. Spencer was given a new name, Page Sabine, in honor of the late empress, and relocated to special apartments where imperial seamstresses readied him for his new position. A complete wardrobe was created for Spencer, featuring dresses designed to complement his altered body shape and conceal any remaining masculine traits. Skilled jewelers crafted bespoke ornaments for him, many of which contained gems that once belonged to Page Sabine herself. These pieces were not merely decorative, they served as concrete reminders of the deceased woman, symbolizing the identity Spencer was compelled to take on. Makeup artists instructed him in cosmetic techniques aimed at feminizing his appearance, demonstrating how to use kohl to enlarge his eyes, apply rouge for a natural blush, and utilize powders to soften the contours of his face. These tutorials extended beyond mere aesthetics, functioning as deliberate efforts to erase his former self. Hairdressers trained Spencer in intricate styling methods popular among elite Roman women. His hair was cut, curled, and fashioned into elaborate designs, often adorned with costly accessories. This daily routine demanded several servants, heated metal instruments, and numerous hours to complete. Perhaps the most mentally taxing aspects were the lessons in feminine conduct and etiquette. Spencer received guidance from tutors who showed him how to walk, sit, and gesture appropriately for a lady. He mastered how to position his hands, place his feet, arrange his garments while seated, and move with fluid elegance, prioritizing grace over masculine vigor. Voice coaches also worked closely with him, helping him adjust his speaking style to higher pitches. Adopting linguistic habits linked to feminine speech proved to be perhaps the greatest challenge, since vocal habits are deeply rooted and hard to alter deliberately. Can you imagine the mental anguish involved in this process of change? Each day, Spencer was compelled to gaze into mirrors that reflected back an unknown face wearing his own features. Every lesson in feminine conduct served as a reminder that his true self was slowly being erased. Every piece of jewelry that once belonged to a deceased woman had transformed into a chain, tying him unwillingly to a role he had never chosen. The wedding was arranged for the spring of 67 AD, deliberately timed to align with religious celebrations that would enhance its ceremonial significance. Nathan spared no cost, treating this event as a genuine imperial marriage worthy of Rome's greatest ruler. The ceremony was held in the grandest hall of the palace, adorned with exotic flowers and lit by countless oil lamps. Musicians played customary wedding melodies, while servants served the finest wines and delicacies. To onlookers unaware of the full truth, it may have appeared as an ordinary imperial wedding, but insiders recognized they were witnessing something entirely unprecedented and unsettling. Here stood the most powerful man on earth, publicly marrying a teenage boy who had undergone surgical transformation and was dressed as his deceased spouse. The ceremony followed all conventional Roman rites, exchanging vows, joining hands, sharing sacred bread, and signing official documents, making this event officially recognized and enshrined in Roman tradition. The union official and the guests all played their roles with impressive acting, offering congratulations and lavish gifts, while showing proper delight. However, beneath the surface, the atmosphere was likely thick with barely hidden horror, morbid fascination, and the tense energy that comes from being part of something deeply wrong. After the wedding, Nathan treated Spencer just as he would treat a true empress. The young man was given his own household staff and quarters within the palace complex, along with an income from the imperial treasury. He had a personal litter for travel, horses for riding, and a retinue of attendants. Despite all this apparent luxury, there was a dreadful cost. Spencer's original identity was completely erased, and he was forced into an ongoing performance of a psychologically overwhelming role. Spencer was expected to accompany Nathan to public events, sit beside him at official dinners, and act as the devoted wife in every interaction. This was not merely for show. Nathan seemed to sincerely believe that he had brought Paige Sabine back to life. He called Spencer by his late wife's name, spoke of shared memories that never happened, and demanded responses that sustained the elaborate illusion. Each day for Spencer became a dangerous act where any mistake could result in death. He had to remember not only how to appear and behave as a woman, but also how to respond as if he truly was Paige. When Nathan mentioned events from his past marriage, Spencer was compelled to react as though they were real. The ancient sources that I have personally studied portray Spencer as increasingly adept at this charade, developing an almost otherworldly talent for reading Nathan's moods and reacting just right. Yet, they also point out that Nathan became more isolated and gloomy over time, even though he continued to perform his public role flawlessly. The mental burden must have been unimaginable. Each morning Spencer awoke in chambers designed to remind him of a deceased woman he never knew. Every mirror reflected a face vastly different from his own, while every interaction demanded that he pretend to be a different person, carrying memories and experiences that were not his. Spencer endured this strange reality for more than 2 years, but his suffering escalated when Nathan resolved to tour Greece. The emperor fancied himself a creative genius and wanted to prove his skills in Greek contests, where he thought he would receive true admiration. Naturally, Spencer accompanied him, presented to foreign rulers as Rome's empress. Picture Greek nobles trying to rationalize their conqueror, traveling with a teenage boy disguised as a woman, and expecting everyone to accept this clear illusion as truth. However, by the year 68 AD, Nathan's wild behavior had finally irked the Roman elite beyond endurance. Uprisings erupted throughout the empire, led by governors fed up with the emperor's unpredictable conduct and failure to govern properly. The Praetorian Guard openly declared resistance to Nathan's rule. The continued reign was met with strong condemnation from the Senate, who branded Nathan as an enemy of the state. When Nathan eventually escaped Rome, accompanied by a small band of followers, Spencer was among them. Even facing death, the emperor could not abandon his living reminder of Poppy. They took refuge in a villa outside the city, hoping for either rescue or capture. Nathan swung between elaborate escape schemes and dramatic preparations for ending his own life. When news arrived that his enemies were closing in, Nathan finally decided to choose death rather than surrender. However, his suicide left Spencer extremely exposed. As one of the most prominent symbols of Nathan's rule, he became both a coveted prize and a dangerous liability for the next person seeking power. What ensued was even more heartbreaking as Spencer turned into a political possession traded among powerful men like a valuable asset. Initially taken by Nidius Sabinus, then passed to U, and later to Vitellius, Spencer was treated similarly as Nathan had treated him, dressed as a woman and called by the name of Poppy. It was under Vitellius's control that Spencer's ordeal reached its darkest chapter. The new emperor decided to exploit him for public spectacle in the arena, reenacting mythological scenes filled with violence and degradation. For Spencer, this represented the deepest humiliation, being subjected to sexual humiliation in front of thousands purely for their entertainment. Rather than endure this final disgrace, Spencer took the only choice left in his power and ended his own life, reclaiming agency after many years of torment. Spencer likely died from poison sometime in the year 69 AD. He was probably no older than 20 years at the time of his death. Spencer eventually escaped the disturbing spectacle that had dominated his existence. His story turned into a warning about the perils of unchecked authority and the human toll of imperial excess. However, ancient historians appeared more intrigued by Spencer as a symbol of imperial corruption than as a real person. What makes his tale so unsettling is not only the cruelty he suffered, but also how he was deliberately deprived of his identity and autonomy from the moment Nathan decided he resembled Paige Sabine. Spencer stopped being an individual and instead became a canvas for the emperor's twisted desires. The fact that Spencer chose death over additional humiliation implies that beneath the imposed femininity and imperial manipulation, some part of his true self persisted. His suicide was both a tragedy and an ultimate act of rebellion, a refusal to be further demeaned even if it meant losing his life. Perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect is how little we know about who Spencer was before this brutal transformation. What ambitions and dreams did he have? What path did he wish to follow? All of that was wiped away when he became Nathan's living doll, replaced by a performance so total that his original identity vanished completely. The boy who was compelled to become an empress endured years of mental and physical torment and ultimately chose to end his life rather than suffer any longer. His story definitely deserves to be remembered. Spencer is meant to be remembered not merely as a peculiar figure from ancient times, but as a symbol of both human cruelty and resilience. By deciding the manner of his own death, Spencer reclaimed the one right that had been taken from him throughout his adult life, the ability to determine his own destiny. His story reveals that behind every grand tale of imperial power lie personal accounts of pain and survival that call for our empathy and reflection. Even after 2,000 years, these individual experiences continue to resonate and deserve to be acknowledged.